Tonight, you'll probably pour a glass of milk without thinking about it twice. It came from a cow, and that feels completely ordinary. Here's the uncomfortable part. Right now, somewhere in the world, a lioness is nursing her cubs on milk thick enough to look closer to cream than liquid, and your body isn't built to safely handle a single glass of it. Not because it's illegal, not because it's disgusting to look at, because the chemistry inside it was never written with you in mind. So let's actually ask the question properly. Why would milk, something that feels like a single, simple, universal substance, turn out to be genuinely dangerous depending entirely on which species produced it? Because the honest answer is that milk isn't one thing at all. It's an enormously variable, highly specific biological formula, essentially a set of survival instructions written by evolution for one particular baby, under one particular set of conditions, and predator milk was written for a baby facing a completely different survival problem than any human infant has ever faced. Let's start with the most immediately obvious difference, fat content, because the range here is genuinely staggering once you see it laid out. Cow milk sits at roughly 4% fat, light and familiar, exactly the kind of thing your gut expects. Lion milk runs considerably richer, closer to 10%. Seal milk pushes this even further, reaching concentrations as high as 50% fat in some species, a liquid that behaves less like milk and more like something approaching solid fat. The reason traces directly back to the specific survival problem each infant is facing. A newborn seal pup often has only a matter of weeks to build enough insulating blubber to survive in freezing water, leaving essentially no room for the slow, gradual growth pattern a human infant follows. That pup can double its entire body weight in under 2 weeks, a growth rate no human infant comes remotely close to matching, fueled specifically by a liquid engineered to deliver concentrated energy as efficiently as biologically possible. Your digestive system, calibrated across your entire evolutionary history around something closer to that 4% range, simply isn't equipped to process a sudden 50% fat load and would respond with significant, immediate gastrointestinal distress rather than smooth digestion. Fat concentration is only the first layer, though, because predator milk differs in ways that go considerably deeper than simple richness. Consider what a newborn predator actually needs beyond calories. A wolf pup, for example, is born blind, deaf, and almost entirely defenseless, with essentially no functioning immune system of its own during those critical first weeks of life. Researchers studying comparative lactation, the scientific field specifically dedicated to comparing milk composition across different species, have found that predator milk frequently carries notably high concentrations of specific immune support compounds, proteins like lysoseme, and various immunoglobulins, essentially pre-built defensive molecules delivered directly through the milk itself. In a genuine sense, this milk isn't just food. It's functioning as a temporary, externally supplied immune system for an infant too underdeveloped to generate meaningful immune defenses on its own. Your body, by contrast, already has a fully developed immune system of its own, meaning flooding your bloodstream with another species-specific immune compounds serves no comparable protective purpose and simply represents another layer of biological mismatch. The differences continue all the way down to sugar content, and this particular difference connects directly to something genuinely fundamental about what each species' brain actually needs to grow. Human milk, along with cow milk, sits relatively high in lactose, milk sugar, because lactose provides fast, efficient fuel specifically suited to supporting rapid brain development, and human infant brains grow at an extraordinary rate, roughly tripling in size within the first year of life alone. True predator species generally show meaningfully lower lactose concentrations in their milk, a difference tied directly to how predator metabolism works even from birth. Carnivorous mammals, including their infants, are metabolically wired around processing protein and fat as primary energy sources rather than sugar, meaning their milk composition reflects and supports that specific metabolic reality rather than the sugar-dependent brain growth pattern human infants rely on. Introducing a human digestive and metabolic system to a low-sugar, high-fat, immune compound-loaded liquid isn't simply offering an unfamiliar taste, it's presenting a nutritional formula your body has no evolved framework for processing appropriately. This raises a genuinely practical question worth addressing directly, because biological mismatch alone doesn't fully explain why predator dairy farming never developed as an industry anywhere in human history. Part of the answer is straightforwardly practical. Safely milking a lioness isn't something any realistic farming operation could accomplish. But there's a deeper structural reason worth examining, because every single animal humans have ever successfully domesticated domesticated specifically for dairy production shares one consistent trait: they're herbivores. Cattle, goats, sheep, water buffalo, camels, yaks, every established dairy species across every human culture throughout history eats plants, produces substantial milk volume, and can be managed safely within a herd structure. Predator species fundamentally don't fit this pattern. A lioness produces a relatively small quantity of milk intended for a small number of cubs and would respond to any attempt at close physical handling with genuine, immediate lethal danger. There has never been a single documented case of a domesticated predator dairy animal anywhere in recorded human history, a pattern too consistent across too many independent cultures to be coincidental, reflecting a filter built jointly by both biological reality and basic practical safety. It's worth pausing on something genuinely interesting about early human behavior specifically here, because the historical pattern reveals something beyond pure practicality. Early humans observing wolf dens or lion prides from a safe distance would have had ample opportunity to witness nursing predator mothers directly, and yet no evidence anywhere in the archaeological or anthropological record suggests any serious historical attempt to domesticate predators specifically for milk. Instead, human populations consistently gravitated towards slower, more manageable grazing animals as their dairy source, a choice made repeatedly, independently, across dramatically different cultures and continents that quietly shaped the entire dairy food system still surrounding you today. Every carton sitting in a modern refrigerator traces its lineage back to that same repeated, independent historical decision. This connects to something genuinely surprising worth exploring in more depth, because even the safe option humans chose instead, herbivore dairy, turns out to be considerably less universally compatible with human biology than most people assume. A substantial majority of the global adult population, generally estimated at around 65%, experiences some degree of lactose intolerance, meaning most adult humans worldwide already struggle to properly digest ordinary cow milk, not predator milk, the herbivore option specifically chosen as the safer path thousands of years ago. Researchers studying the genetics behind lactase persistence, the specific trait that allows some adults to continue digesting lactose comfortably into adulthood, have traced this capability back to a specific genetic mutation that emerged somewhere between roughly 7,000 and 9,000 years ago, appearing independently within populations closely tied to early cattle herding cultures in parts of Europe and Africa. Before this particular mutation appeared and spread, no adult human anywhere on Earth could comfortably digest milk, cow milk included, well into adulthood. Human infants could digest lactose effectively, a biological given, but that capability was expected to fade after weaning, exactly as it still does in most mammal species today. The ability many people take completely for granted, drinking milk comfortably as an adult, isn't actually humanity's default biological setting. It's a relatively recent genetic upgrade, one that happened to spread specifically within populations that lived in close, sustained contact with dairy animals. Bringing predator milk back into this picture in light of that context makes the underlying risk considerably clearer. If a meaningful majority of humans already struggle with comparatively mild, low-fat cow milk, a substance engineered around a 30-day blubber-building sprint, or built around a metabolism designed to run primarily on fat and protein rather than sugar, would represent an even more dramatic mismatch, functioning less like a beverage and more like an entirely foreign biological formula never designed with human digestion in mind at all. There's also a second, genuinely important risk factor worth examining directly, one connected to something we've covered in earlier videos on this channel regarding predator meat specifically: biomagnification. Because predators sit at the top of their respective food chains, everything they consume throughout their lives, including environmental toxins, heavy metals, and various persistent pollutants, tends to accumulate and concentrate within their tissue over time. A herbivore absorbs relatively modest environmental toxin exposure directly from plant matter. A predator, having consumed animals that themselves already accumulated environmental exposure, ends up carrying a meaningfully concentrated version of that same toxin load. Milk, being a notably fat-rich tissue, represents precisely the kind of bodily substance where many of these compounds tend to accumulate most heavily. This means predator milk isn't only nutritionally mismatched to human digestion, it potentially carries an entire lifetime of concentrated environmental exposure passed directly into a liquid that would otherwise be consumed the same casual way any other other milk is. So the picture that emerges here isn't really about predator milk being some kind of forbidden novelty humans have simply never gotten around to trying. It's about an extraordinarily precise, deeply specific biological formula, one written by evolution around an entirely different survival problem than anything a human infant has ever faced, reinforced by genuine domestication, impracticality, and layered with a genuine toxin concentration risk that would exist regardless of digestive compatibility on its own. Every species effectively writes its own version of this formula based on exactly how quickly its offspring needs to grow, how vulnerable that offspring is at birth, and what specific threats it needs to survive. A seal pup's milk built around urgent fat accumulation, a wolf pup's milk built around borrowed immune defense, a human infant's milk built around fueling rapid brain growth. So the next time you pour a glass of milk without a second thought, it's worth remembering that you're not drinking some neutral, universal liquid. You're drinking one extremely specific set of biological instructions, originally written for a calf, that your own body happens to be able to process only because of a genetic mutation that spread through certain human populations a few thousand years ago. A mutation the majority of adult humans worldwide still don't actually carry. Somewhere out there right now, a lion cub is drinking an entirely different set of instructions, written just as precisely and just as specifically for it, and neither liquid was ever meant to cross that particular line.